Hello, friend, you who probably have hundreds of thought tabs open in your mind. Thank you for deciding to open one more tab and choosing to spend it with me. I hope the sound from this tab will be gentle enough if you can temporarily ignore the notifications from other tabs. And I'm Who. Thank you for joining my 7th podcast. This time, the 7th podcast is coming out quite a bit later than originally planned. Because actually, I've been spending more time preparing a few things for my upcoming passion project. So, the thing is, I'm about to open an online secondhand shop, everyone. I'm doing it, but I'm also doing it with fear, afraid of not being able to do it, afraid no one will buy. In short, it's my first time, so I'll probably be very confused. But I guess it's okay, right? Just keep trying. We'll see how it goes. This feeling really reminds me of when I used to tend to a plant, everyone. Nervous, meticulous, but also incredibly joyful. So joyful that some days I'd be so engrossed I'd forget the time entirely. One day wasn't enough to get things done. And when you start something new, even though it's incredibly daunting, I'm still extremely excited. It reminds me of something I think all of us have experienced, dreams. Those dreams from way back when we thought, I'll do it tomorrow, I'll start tomorrow, I'll try tomorrow. And then that tomorrow stretched into months, years. Some dreams I've forgotten, some I've temporarily put aside, and some are still somewhere within me, yet to be reached. So in this 7th podcast episode, Unfinished Dreams, I want to talk with everyone about the things I once didn't dare to do, didn't dare to pursue, and all the times I convinced myself it wasn't the right moment. Perhaps the dreams I'm about to talk about won't be like the dreams you and I have heard before. But please, consider this a different perspective from my own experiences or what I've heard. It might be true for me, but not for others. And I'm always ready to listen to all your different perspectives. Remember to leave a comment below to let me know. For now, let's begin. When we were little, I think all of us believed that if you just liked something enough, the whole universe would bend to your will. Our youth was once so simply naive it was laughable. We'd see someone sing beautifully and immediately think we could also stand on a stage. We'd watch a touching movie and tell ourselves we absolutely had to do something great someday. We'd read a good book and immediately believe we were born to become someone meaningful. All those thoughts were carefree, pure, and utterly fearless. Back then, a dream wasn't too difficult a concept to explain. It simply appeared naturally, like a reflex. You liked it, so you dreamed, and if you dreamed, you believed. Believed without reason, without asking if you could do it, without considering money, time, or your capabilities. You just needed to feel a slight tremor in your heart, and that was enough. We lived through years where the future looked like a vast field, and no one had yet told us that this path would be difficult. Each of us carried within us a very innocent, very believing, and also very vulnerable version of ourselves. Even though back then, we didn't know how painful reality would be. When I was in school, I used to sit in class, chin in hand, looking out the window, and my mind would spontaneously paint a different life. A life where I lived a life worth living, doing what I loved, living the way I wanted, and everything had meaning. I didn't know what that specific meaning was, but I believed it existed and that I would surely reach it someday in the future. Back then, I didn't think much about success. I only thought about who I would become. I thought about the feeling of living true to what I believed. I thought about a future version of myself, more mature, more capable, but still retaining the bright eyes of the present. In middle school, there was a boy in my class who loved anything related to the sky. He would often draw airplanes on the back of his notebooks and in his books, jotting down names of aircraft models, numbers about altitude, and speed that he'd read somewhere. And back then, how could kids like me understand all that? Then, during recess, when other kids ran out to the playground, he would stay in class, flipping through books, writing, and drawing as if he was afraid of forgetting a detail that had just popped into his head. Once our teacher was chatting with the class about the future. When it was his turn, she asked, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" He answered immediately, without hesitation, "Yes, I want to be a pilot." The answer sounded very childlike, right? But I could feel that he truly believed in it. He spoke with such a certain tone. It wasn't some fanciful daydream, but absolute conviction. At that moment, no one laughed at him. No one told him, "Hey, your dream is too unrealistic, you can't do that." Because at that age, all of us were dreaming of something grand, and strangely, other people's dreams were easier to accept than our own later on. Our youth was filled with such beliefs, believing we had time, believing we would find our way. believing that if we tried hard enough, everything would be okay, believing we were different from the tired adults around us, believing we wouldn't become someone living a life we didn't choose. Some nights in 12th grade, I'd lie in bed, lights off, but my mind ablaze with vivid scenes. I imagined myself standing somewhere far from the present. Maybe a different city, a different job, a different version of myself. I wasn't afraid of failure, nor was I afraid to start over, because I believed I was young and my youth was allowed to make mistakes, allowed to try. The only thing I feared back then was perhaps not living life to the fullest, but that very fear was wrapped in a very naive belief that I definitely wouldn't let that happen. I had another friend in college who loved photography. He didn't study art, nor did he have money for a fancy camera. He just used his iPhone 7 Plus back then. He would photograph everything he saw, from the stairwell in school, the sunlight hitting a morning coffee cup, to the very real faces on the street. And every time he took a photo he really liked, he'd excitedly post it online as if he'd just preserved a piece of time for himself. He once told me, "I don't know if I'll ever be able to make a living from this, but I know I can't not take pictures." That statement, thinking back now, I still find so beautiful. Beautiful in a way that only people who haven't been asked too many tough questions by life can express. Back then, he didn't need to know how far he would go. He just needed to know that he liked it and was heading in the right direction. When we were young, we often didn't clearly distinguish between dreams and reality. That's why, as we grew up, the pain of losing a dream became so silent and profound. I didn't know, and I wasn't prepared for the possibility that one day I wouldn't believe like that anymore, because I wasn't taught how to face the fading of belief. I only knew how to dream, not how to hold on to it. And so, youth passed in a beautiful light. The light of hope, of passion, of promises to oneself. Then one day, reality began to knock on the door. Not loudly, not as a big event that caused everything to collapse instantly, but very gradually, very steadily, and deeply felt. Reality came in the form of questions that once seemed limitless. What will I do to live later? Will I get a job after graduation? How much will I earn? Will it be stable? Will it be enough to support myself? These questions initially seemed to just pass through, but the older I got, the longer they lingered in my mind, until they began to intrude on even the purest dreams. Some days, I still dreamed of what I loved, but immediately after, another voice echoed. Small, but very clear. But it's too difficult. But it's not realistic. But what if it doesn't work out? And so, I don't know when, dreams for me started to become conditional, and from that moment, I knew my dreams were no longer carefree. I noticed that often, the first setback doesn't come from failure but from comparison. It's the day I realize I'm not the best, not the most outstanding, not the first person called. Maybe I'm still okay, still normal. But that normal can sometimes be a very uncomfortable position, not bad enough to give up immediately, but not excellent enough to make me confident to continue. I wonder if you've ever experienced this. Back in school, there would usually be someone in class who was very good academically. For years, they were used to being at the top of the class, always praised by teachers, admired by friends, always feeling like they would become someone special. Then one day, they carried that confidence into a new environment where there were many other smart students. Some who were not only quick learners but also very intelligent. That's when they realized, it turns out I'm not as special as I once thought. And at that point, trying became accompanied by a sense of exhaustion. Not because the assignments were getting harder, but because of the feeling that you were just trying not to fall behind, rather than trying to move forward. Reality also came in the form of money, tuition, rent, food, living expenses. Concrete numbers, regular and emotionless. They don't care what you like, they don't care what you dream about. They just need to be paid on time. Some people, they once believed strongly in their dreams, but then one day they had to face a choice. Continue pursuing something with an unknown outcome, or choose a clearer path to avoid becoming a burden on their family. That choice isn't weakness, it's just very adult. I remember not too long ago, my boyfriend shared this with me. There will come a time when I can no longer follow my passions, the things I like, if they can't earn money, and I'll have to start thinking about getting a more stable job. Actually, inside, it's not that I don't want to pursue my passion, but I don't dare to make my parents worry more, and I also need to try to stabilize sooner for our future together. Yes, dreams in such moments don't shatter. They are just quietly, guiltily, set aside. Then reality comes in the form of time. Time is no longer abundant, no longer allowing me to try again and again. My study schedule fills up, my work hours lengthen, deadlines appear more regularly, and my parents are getting older and can't wait for me anymore. The spaces once reserved for dreaming are filled with responsibilities. First, responsibility for schoolwork, then for work, and gradually, responsibility for the very life I'm living. Some nights I'm so tired, I just want to sleep. Not because I'm lazy, but because I have no strength left. And on such nights, I know my dreams are no longer a priority. Reality also doesn't come alone. It brings expectations. Expectations from family, from society, from those around me, and then expectations from myself. There was a period when I started to think that I should do what was right for my age, right for the time, right for what others considered reasonable. These right things aren't bad, it's just that they don't always align with what I once truly wanted. Currently I work full-time freelance, not affiliated with any company. Work is sometimes abundant, sometimes scarce, and so is my income. For me, I'm used to it, but for my parents, not so much. Sometimes I catch my parents' worried gaze. Is that okay? Is it safe? What about the future? Once, my mother even said, let me see if there's a suitable and stable job for you somewhere. I'll ask them to help you get it. In those moments, I would start to doubt my own choices. It's not that I hate the work I'm doing, but everyone knows that freelancing has no certainty, right? Some months are abundant, some months I have to budget every expense. I've even thought about applying for a job at a company for more peace of mind. But then every time I think of doing something right and stable, I hesitate. Not because it's wrong, but because I'm not sure if I would still be myself with that choice. And that's the moment dreams begin to be weighed. Weighed against safety, weighed against stability, weighed against the opinions of others. And that scale rarely tips towards dreams. Some dreams don't die from opposition, they die from being postponed for too long. Later, wait until things are stable, when I have more free time. These statements sound very reasonable, don't they? And precisely because they're reasonable, no one notices what we're losing. Until one day, I suddenly realize I no longer speak, no longer think, no longer remember it. That feeling isn't like sadness. It's like an empty space filled with other things. It looks full, but when you touch it, there's nothing there. And as we grow a little older, the age where we can clearly see the gap between dreams and reality, life begins to settle into a rather steady rhythm. No more impulsive days, no more dizzying crashes. Everything happens in a familiar sequence. Go to work in the morning, come home in the evening, get paid at the end of the month, look back at the year that has passed at year end. Not exciting, but not too heavy either. And the strange thing is, in that steady rhythm of life, we no longer feel panicked. Not because everything is perfect, but because we've learned how to live in reality in a less hurtful way. Knowing to wake up on time so as not to rush to work. Knowing to focus enough at work so as not to bring pressure home. Knowing to decline things beyond our capacity, and knowing to save a little energy for things more important than just trying hard for one day. Growing up, it turns out, isn't just about leaving things behind, but also about gaining things we never had when we were young. There were years when I learned so many things I used to think I didn't need. How to solve problems, how to talk so as not to make others uncomfortable and not feel uncomfortable myself. How to accept that not every effort yields the desired result. And that doesn't mean I've failed. I started to understand myself better, knowing what pace of life suits me, how much pressure I can handle, when to push harder and when to stop. This understanding didn't come from books or advice. It came from the times I made mistakes, the times I was tired, the times I felt like I couldn't take it anymore, but still managed to get through it. And in that process, I realized something: not all dreams that are put aside are losses. Some dreams, if kept in their original form, might actually lead to exhaustion and fatigue. Growing up gives me the right to adjust, to change in the way I want to live, without feeling like I'm betraying myself. Dreams no longer stand at the center. They no longer dictate every choice, but they also haven't disappeared. They're like a compass placed somewhere very still, not pushing me to go fast, nor forcing me to make a sharp turn somewhere. It just reminds me what kind of person I am, what I value, and who I don't want to become. There are decisions I make purely out of reality, for money, for stability, for very real responsibilities. But remembering the years I once dreamed keeps me from becoming cold to those choices. I work, but I don't forget why I dislike certain things. I choose a safer path, but I still know what moves me. And that's what makes this life, even if it's not the original dream, still have moments that are very much worth living. New joys emerge that I couldn't have imagined when I was young. The feeling of being able to take care of myself. The feeling of accomplishing something very difficult. The feeling of being trusted with responsibility. The feeling of being more stable in situations that used to just thinking about them scared me. These joys aren't loud. They don't make my heart race like when I thought about old dreams. But they carry a very different feeling. The feeling of standing firmly on my own 2 feet. It turns out that before, I dreamed a lot while not truly knowing how to keep myself safe. But now, even though I dream a little less, I know how to protect myself better, how to conserve my strength, how not to push myself to the limit just to prove something. And perhaps the most important thing this stage brings isn't achievement, but serenity. I no longer compare myself to too many people, no longer see every choice as a win or loss. I've started to see life as a series of stages. Each stage has its own pros and cons, and the dreams that were once so grand are now thought of more lightly, no longer forcing myself to achieve them immediately. I haven't returned to it, but I also haven't said I've abandoned it. I still keep tiny things related to it. Like a journal not thrown away, a file not deleted, a thought that occasionally appears and then drifts away. Maybe it's not the right time, maybe it will never return in its old form. But at least for me, I no longer treat it like a mistake. And at this point, that's enough for me. There comes a time when I also have to frankly admit that not every dream needs to be pursued to the very end. And that doesn't make this life any less valuable. Some people are very lucky. They find what they love early, have the means to pursue it, have enough energy and circumstances to go all the way. They get to live their dreams. And if you are one of them, congratulations, that is truly something to cherish. Not everyone can do that. And if you are on that path, try your best and don't give up. But then there are many others, people who once dreamed, once believed, once tried, and then for many reasons couldn't continue. It's not because they were lazy, not because they were lacking, but simply because life took them in a different direction. And that direction, sometimes, isn't as bad as we think. Many people used to see not being able to pursue a dream as something very heavy, like they had made a mistake, missed the most important opportunity in life. But the older I get, the more I realize that life doesn't operate in just one direction. Dreams are often just one path in life's journey. Besides dreams, there's also the matter of what kind of person we become as we live each day. How do I treat myself? Am I kind to others? Am I living a life that, when I look back, I feel at peace with myself? And those things aren't part of any specific dream, but they greatly determine whether a life is worth living. Some people don't achieve what they once dreamed of, but become very trustworthy individuals. Some don't live up to the dreams of their youth, but build a life stable enough to shelter others. Some leave dreams behind, but don't leave behind kindness, responsibility, and effort in how they live. And really, that's also something to be very proud of. Not everyone needs a brilliant life. Some lives are quieter, gentler, but still beautiful in their own unique way, right? Dreams, after all, are not a test to score who is more successful than whom. They are just a possibility, a direction, one of many ways to live. It's good if you can pursue them, but it's okay if you can't. You don't need to carry guilt just because your life takes a different path. You also don't need to label things that didn't happen as failures. Some things don't come true not because you're lacking, but because life itself is broader and more complex than you once thought. Perhaps if today you are living a life that doesn't resemble your old dreams, that doesn't mean you've gone astray. Perhaps you are just living a different version of life. A version that, at this moment, might be more suitable, more sustainable, and more resilient. And if one day you still want to return to the things you once dreamed of, it's never too late. But if you don't return, if you still choose to continue living with what you have, that choice is also entirely worthy of respect. This life doesn't demand you live according to your dreams. Life only asks you to live authentically within your capabilities and circumstances, true to yourself. As long as you are still living, still trying, still being kind to yourself, then whether dreams accompany you or not, that life is still a valuable life. And that's the end of my podcast episode today. It's time to close this tab. I hope this tab today helped you organize a few thoughts or simply gave you some space to breathe. Now you can return to your other tabs a little more lightly. Goodbye and see you next time you open a tab.